Evening, everybody,
Evening.
to our virtual panel competition evening. We're going to be very dependent on the technology tonight, so I'm really grateful to Susan for taking it on. Thank you, Susan. It's been a nightmare job. Judging for us tonight, Tony Bramley, who actually won the winner of this competition goes through to the Chelmsford Panel 6 competition every year, and Tony actually won it with a portion of his F panel some years ago. I remember seeing it and it was absolutely amazing. I was there the day you won that, so absolutely brilliant. So really pleased that you're with us tonight to judge our panels. Thank you very much. Couple of housekeeping things before we start. Can everybody, everybody except the people doing the judging and the technology, mute themselves and turn off video so that it makes it easier for streaming. It means that we don't suddenly make noises like, oh, that didn't deserve that, in the middle of the judging. So I'm going to mute myself now and hand over to Tony. Welcome, Tony.
Okay, thank you. Can I just double check with you, time of finish? It's at 10?
Yeah, it's normally 10, but I found that Zoom meets don't tend to last quite as long.
No, that's okay. The only reason I was asking is the first time I've asked this question is last week I was judging for someone in Scotland and they finished at 9 o'clock and they didn't tell me. Actually, I wasn't judging, it was a talk. And nowhere did they say, they said it started at 7:30, but they never said kind of like it finished at 9. And everywhere around here finishes at 10. And of course, I went on till 10 o'clock.
Our Zoom meetings have tended to be about 8:30, but I think it really depends on the number of images that we've got and how long it takes.
Yeah. So I'm now going to ask. Normally the emails do come through at just the start time and not a finish time. So I thought, never had it in kind of like 5 years, but you never know, it could happen again. So there. But
double speed.
Thank you for having me along tonight. I've had the images for a couple of days and had a couple of run-throughs, which for me is always lovely. I picked up someone probably about 6 weeks ago now on Facebook on one of the group pages saying, having a moan and saying, oh, bloody judges, they're now getting the pictures beforehand and they get lots of time to actually go through all the faults. And my view was, well, he must have had a few faults, so he wasn't too happy. And I was just saying right earlier when I came in just after about 7:10, so it's lovely to have the pictures beforehand because at least you can appreciate the pictures, because normally you get, a minute and a half, 2 minutes. And I don't do this for any other reason apart from, I enjoy doing that and seeing the pictures. So having a bit more time to appreciate the pictures is lovely. And it does mean that hopefully you can give a bit of a better critique as well. So that's really, really important. So I love Zoom and love panels, some interesting panels, a good selection tonight. And I've been told it's the first, second and third. And I can also, if I want, give a highly commended and also a possible personal favourite. So I will take that on board and work through and try not to upset anyone too much.
Right. So I'm just going to run through the panels to start with. 26 panels altogether. So I'm gonna go through each panel individually. I'll run through the 6 images and then focus on the panel for Tony to critique. Abstracted images.
Okay, can I just quickly check as well? Are you going to have a break somewhere in between?
Yes, probably about 7:30, Tony.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Break whenever you need. It doesn't bother me, but we'll see how we go.
Yeah.
Just trying to pace myself, but it's always difficult with panels. But we've got plenty of time tonight anyway. Okay, so off with the first one. Yeah, lovely to see some. I think there's maybe 3 abstract, semi-abstract, maybe 4. I can't remember now actually, but good to see some abstract work in the groupings. And I've seen a few of these over the last 12 months, and I think it is probably about 12 months, and I've not seen any before. So whether this is something that's just been in a magazine or just somewhere online and it's starting to take off. And I'd never seen anything like this before. The first ones I saw in a club, and I find them really interesting. And for a start, the lovely thing from what I found out about these is that they are photographically derived, which is what we want at the end of the day. And a lot of people say, well, that's not photography, but it is photographically derived, and it's about exploring. I think primarily the colours, but the shapes really come about from the work in Photoshop, because I think this is the zooming and twirling technique in there. So it's choosing the right images to get the right colours, and to then use the technique to get something that's really balanced and works as a piece of abstract art. So I do appreciate these. I actually think there's a couple of gems in here, and it's the top left and the top right in particular, I think are absolutely beautiful. Particularly top right, I have a sway towards Russian constructivism, and there's just a hint of Russian constructivism coming through on the one on the right, which is why it's a personal favourite of mine. Very dynamic, lots of energy in all of these, but in particular, I love the energy in the one on the right and the way it's been split. It almost feels like it has the technique has been interrupted and worked on by the author. I don't know if that is the case, but I do get that feel that there's just something extra been added to this one because of how different it is to the other 5. Now, however, saying that, because it's a bit more different from the other 5, as a panel does let it down a little bit, but not so much as I think the bottom 2, the left and right on the bottom there. Again, I like what's working with them, but they are a little less involved, if you like, in the patterns and the way the composition is coming together. They're fairly simple compared to the rest, and I think it's just a little bit of a shame that they're on black backgrounds. I think we should have really gone with what's going on with the other 4. So I know you've balanced them left and right at the bottom, but I really think they shouldn't be on black backgrounds, and you should do what you've done with the rest, particularly left and right, because how you've bled the edges into the background there is absolutely beautiful. I do like these 2 in the centre, top and bottom. They should be in the centre. I think you've got that right. I think you've got them the right way round with that strong red coming up towards the top of that bottom one. So it kind of like centralises these 2 into the middle. And you've got a little bit of red on that middle one at the top as well. As a single picture on its own, it is a little bit unbalanced being in that bottom left-hand corner. But again, it's pulling you into the centre. So overall, I think the actual shapes, if you like, are really well balanced, a good balanced panel. But bottom left and right, I would have liked to have seen something along the lines of the other backgrounds with those. But I do love the work, absolutely beautiful. Top right, I could quite easily have that on my wall here. You need to see that picture really big on the wall, because some glorious tones and colours. Although it's not as bright as the others, there's some lovely subtle work going on in there. So beautiful panel, but I will hold this one back, actually. We'll take another look at that one. Just to let you know, as we're moving on, I've had time to go through and get my ideas on what I want, and I have a fairly strong idea of where I want to be, but I don't make a final decision until the end, because until I give a critique, and I've not planned, you know, 100% of my critique, but sometimes I change my mind once I get into the passion of the panels and the images. Okay.
Next one is all made up.
Lovely to see something interesting in here, isn't it? Different, very different. Yeah, so as we went through on three, images 4 and 5 are a bit hard to stomach, really, aren't they? I know the 6th one is pretty bad, but getting in close on these makeup spots, it's not something you really want to do on top of lunch or dinner. So yeah, well done on choosing something different here for a start. And there are a few here where we've got kind of like storylines going on, and this really is a storyline. So I do love the idea, and we've got this lovely young lady here, and just that gradual transformation through to something where, you know, maybe you would want to give her a hug at the beginning, but certainly not at the end there. And also maybe a bit of, you know, commercial viability in this panel, because I'm sure whoever did the work, that has a lot of commercial value to the person that did that, if that's something they do. Yeah, it's very much about progress and a record of this work on the face. And I think you're right to have gone with all of the faces as they are. It's all about being cropped in, seeing the technique of this makeup and its progression. There's just one thing that lets this down for me as a panel in a club competition, and it's something that could be done with some pre-planning, because I'm sure this was done in one session, and that is that we have got a variation of the lighting as we go through, and there's also a little bit of change in the color balance, which that could have been corrected in post-production anyway, but you can certainly see it with the bottom middle image is very, very different lighting. So that kind of like stands out with the bottom right against all of the others, but the one on the middle bottom stands out because of the very different lighting there. But there is also different lighting going on very subtly, and really I think this should all be about planning what lighting is needed, and probably what you need to focus on is the lighting for the final image, and then follow that through so that they kind of like are all the same, but what's changing is the actual technique of the makeup. So a bit of a shame about that, but I do like the idea. So we will pass on this one.
Blue and white.
Now, I mentioned in chatting at the beginning that there were 2 or 3 panels that kind of like took me somewhere else, and this is one of them, and it's quite an intriguing panel, I think. For a start, I presume it's something like maybe Greek islands, something like that, and I've been to a few Greek islands, but at one point many years ago, I used the phrase that we became all Greeked out and had enough. And I haven't been to Greece for a long time now. But when I saw this, it just made me think I want to go to Greece and get some white houses and blue skies and seas and this sort of thing. So, so thank you for that. And it has given me some ideas, which I will come on to. The idea is absolutely lovely. That there's a part of this panel that I really love, and I don't think it's intentional, and my apologies if I'm wrong here. But let me just say that there is a couple of issues with the photographs, and we're talking technical quality here. One is that the tonal ranges have really been crushed quite a lot, and I don't think it's intentional. And we can see that in some of the blue skies coming through. There's one or two in particular where maybe the quality's not there, and the blacks have really gone to black. Now, I don't mind to a certain degree some of these blacks, because there's the number 1, 2, 3, yeah, middle right, the shadows on that window there. I actually love those black shadows there, and what's going on with the tree as well. But there certainly is an issue with quality. And the second part on the quality side is really these highlights. There's 2 or 3 where you've got some wonderful textures coming through, and which is what these buildings are also all about. But there are 1 or 2 where they've kind of like got no texture at all. It's just gone pure white. So that lets the panel and the images down. Now, because we've got a mix there, I'm not being as forgiven. But what I love about the panel is that it's given me certainly ideas and thought for the future, because the way you've framed it and the fact that there's no key lines, maybe it should have key lines to separate them all out, okay? And many people, I think, would say that. And maybe that should be the case, because they start to get muddled up and you're not sure where one starts and one stops. Now, that may be a criticism, but actually I like it. And it may be that it's not intentional. I'd just like to talk to the author about this, actually, because I would have put it on a plain white background, and we've got kind of like an off-whitey sort of colour there with texture in the background. And I would have actually taken the highlights further, and I would have had all of these whites bleeding into white so that you couldn't tell that there were 6 images there. It probably really upset your competition secretary and some judges, but this has almost become one image, hasn't it? And I do love the balance that's coming through. If you kind of like make this smaller or squint, all of those windows, and the sky becomes a window in white. There's lovely shapes going on, and the balance of these darker shapes across kind of like this whole upright image is absolutely beautiful. And I think there's something to play around with, kind of like getting this all bleeding into one image from 6 images. It's making me feel, next time I go to somewhere like this, I want to have a intentional kind of like half day shooting for this particular reason. So thank you for taking me that way. I think this has got amazing potential for something quite special, but for this, it's not quite come off. So I will pass on this one.
Okay.
Okay, you know, there's a big chunk of this panel I really like, and some of you are going to say that, you know, they're quite busy, these pictures, aren't they? But that's what a boot fair is, and we're trying to get the story of the boot fair and the environment across. And I don't mind all of this busyness going on, because you can't help it, and it is a boot fair. What I do appreciate with all of this busyness is that the top 3 in particular, you've taken me into the boot fair, because you've gone wide and you've put in the foreground the goods that are on sale, and, you know, taking me in, I can explore what you're seeing at the boot fair and what a customer is seeing at the boot fair. So I actually think with those top 3 in particular, you've really encompassed the feeling of what a boot fair is all about. So really well done on that. And we have got some character coming through, particularly on middle and top right there. So that works very, very strong. It's when we get down to the bottom, unfortunately, I just think it's not quite there. One reason is that we have almost a repetition left and right on the bottom there with these refreshment stands, and I think only one was needed really. And they're just as busy with text as the other panels, but that is what they are all about. So I think one is probably essential and gives that feel of the story, but the other one is almost a mirror copy of what that is. So it's not giving me think any anything more coming through that. And then the middle one, a great shot and a lovely lady, but she just seems out of context. And it may be you're trying to get across that, yes, we have the boot fair, we have the refreshments, and by the way, here's a customer. But maybe if you hadn't gone black and white color popped, that may have helped, because it's just kind of like unbalancing the whole set really. So that's a bit unfortunate. So I think a couple of images there just has let it down, but it also has some really positive feel for like that summer boot fair as well. You've got some great exposure going on, really nailed the exposure, lots of depth of field, and you do have that summer feeling. But yeah, always with the panels, isn't it difficult that maybe just one or two can let things down, and maybe it's kind of like trying to pull and put something that will work in there. We're going to see that a couple more times at least tonight as well. So yeah, great storyline overall, but just a couple letting it down. We'll pass on that one.
Bottle party bling.
So I wonder, I think maybe, probably someone's collection of these, I'm going to call them exotic bottles because I think they are. And in some ways I'm envious. And again, this is really going back to having the time to sometimes look at pictures is absolutely wonderful. And gives me time to think about things as well. And if I had this collection, I could do so much with it, and I haven't got anything like this. So as a panel, I think it works really well together. And it is all about these exotic bottles, and it has to me, a Middle Eastern feel, with these bottles. It's not the sort of thing you'd normally buy in our shops around here. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't go buying exotic bottles, but it has that feel to me. They are still life, so it is about, taking full control of everything. And this is where I think you just need to do a little bit more work on here. You can see top right, that one, it's almost like a flare coming through. I don't know what the lighting is. It may be just natural lighting, but there's certainly some sort of kind of like misty feel over it, a flare. So that kind of like sits on its own on there and unbalances things. Watch with things like this that don't use too wide an angle. I think some of these, we're getting a little bit of distortion coming through on wide angle lenses. You want to shoot a still life of this sort of styling with a portrait lens. So something like certainly if you've got a zoom, go at 70 full frame, but somewhere around about 100, 120. And that will really compress everything and make them look better rather than any distortion. So you get very little distortion. They are quite repetitive. They are all very different, which is fantastic, but it's very repetitive and a very similar setup. And I just think getting some different lighting, whether it's bringing in some backlighting, some side lighting, and controlling the lighting would lift everything completely. Where I'm really envious on this is that I do love the bottles. I think you've got 18 bottles here. You've got 18 pictures for the future. And maybe I'm totally wrong with this Middle Eastern vibe on it, but I've been inclined to take one of each of these bottles and work it with something like a spice, but not the ground spices. If you could get the whole spices and that worked with the colours, and I'd look at doing a set of like one bottle with some spices as a really spend about 2 or 3 hours per shot setting something up. And that's where I'm envious, because I love these bottles and I think there's a lot of potential with these. I hope you go back and spend some more time doing some still lives life with them individually. But get that lighting right, really difficult to do. It's not easy. It's not like shooting out in daylight and you can go with what daylight gives you. You've got to control the lighting, do a lot of reading up on it and get the lighting right. And I think you've got some great work here to play with in the future, but we'll let this one go for the competition.
Citroen classic cars.
It's interesting going through these individually, and what comes across as they come up individually is what lovely exposures you've got. They're lovely, crisp, clear, correctly exposed, lovely tonal range going through. Even with those, bright skies in the background, you still manage to maintain good detail throughout. So well done on that. Watch out for naughty little tricks like reversing images, like that blue one in the bottom right corner, because the number plate is in reverse. So just cut out that number plate and flick it the other way around, just to confirm that I don't know that it's been flipped. And do you know what? I hadn't noticed that until the run through just then. So yeah, it does get noticed sometimes at the very last minute. You obviously love Citroen classic cars. It's an interesting panel from a point of view, again, taking me somewhere else. And I'd love to maybe do a couple of different things with this. I think you've done the best thing you can do here with the layout, because it is difficult, isn't it? Cars going one way and they're side on, very flat and straight, and you've got some other ones at different angles, and to try and get them looking balanced, and you've just done well on the bottom with the left and right, but trying to get them balanced is very, very difficult with the rest. And going through them individually, this is one of the things that I'd have taken this in a different way, is that they reminded me of the old, dare I say, cigarette cards from, I don't know, must be the 60s or 70s. I can remember as a kid collecting cigarette cards, and it has that feel to it. And I mean that in a really positive way. And that I quite like the idea of all these Citroens just being shot from one side, the same direction. So, the front on the right-hand side and the back on the left, and just a run of 6 of those, a cigarette card sort of feel. Because it is a celebration of these shapes and these cars. There are some distractions with people in the background, and I think you just could have been taken a bit more care with that, particularly top center. And we have got some people inside as well, so I think you either go for one or the other and maybe not mix it up. Now, saying that, it's just me thinking again about the potential of, I love the idea of this, but I would certainly wouldn't want people in the background. But I think either go, with the no people at all, and you have this everything the same, and just change the shapes and the colours as necessary, or go with an owner and make them a happy owner, maybe on the outside, and it's classic Citroen cars and their happy owners, because a couple of the owners in the cars there, they really do, they love their cars, don't they? And that comes through. So I think there's a couple of other ideas there that would really lift this panel and make it something quite special. Even to the point, can you imagine going to one of these and taking along and setting up, classic Citroens and their happy owners, and you'd probably sell a few of these. So I do love the idea. I think as a panel, as these 6 stand, it doesn't quite balance out, unfortunately. But a very unusual idea. I absolutely love it. Lots of legs in that one to do for the future. We will pass on that for this, though.
Eggs.
Okay, so is that every judge's nightmare, that one? I actually do like this. I don't think, I'm going to say straight out, I don't think it's quite there. But hopefully no, I do have a second pun coming up actually, but my first pun of the night is at least someone's thinking out of the box, even if it's the egg box. So thank goodness Zoom doesn't give me all of the laughter coming through, so it drown what I'm saying. But, you know, you have to give this a little bit more thought. It reminds me of contemporary photography, okay? And not in the terms of RPS contemporary photography, but in the terms of contemporary art photography. And I will come back to this, but you know, you could say, what is with this person on? It's kind of like 5 pictures of eggs and then obviously an egg out of its shell here. And there is natural balance because of repetition of shape and colour and tone. Now, I think it's been done with natural light, looking at the reflections in the egg yolk. And if it is, I think it is, but I can always be wrong. You've handled, and it shows how natural light can be so good. We've got this lovely gradient coming from top to bottom. It's working on the background as well as the eggs. And lovely soft light as well. And you can see where highlights are coming through, particularly top right. Lovely soft highlights, just, you know, those 2 windows just kind of like pushing through very, very faintly on the eggshell there. So it is beautiful lighting, and we don't need to be in the studio. And afterwards, you're going to tell me it was in the studio and make me feel a fool, but I do that all the time. But anyway, that's lighting. So I think you've handled the light great. Nothing wrong with this sort of lighting. And what lets me down is I think those 5 eggs should all be exactly the same size. This is about repetition, okay? And as much as, you know, that there is interest when things are different sizes, we are talking about the same tones almost, but variations of 3 against 2, but they are similar tones, same lighting, same shape. And I think they should all be exactly, and I'm saying exactly the same size. And that top one takes that out there. I love the different one at the bottom, okay? And you've shot that extremely well. And it just kind of like, almost, I was going to say separates, but it opens up the whole display of the 6 images as a panel. So when you was going through them one at a time, I don't know whether you noticed what I love about this, and it may not have been the intention, possibly. I hope so, but they're all the same egg. But when you look at them one at a time, everyone's got different textures. There's something slightly different about each one, and maybe just running through them, you don't have enough time to see that. So I do think it's out of balance, unfortunately. I want to finish on one really big positive for this set, though, because it's one of the more unusual ones, which unfortunately I'm not going to hold back. I'll tell you that straight away. But there is something you need to get across, and this does remind me of some work I've seen at the Tate Modern. In fact, I've seen worse, if you like, at the Tate Modern. I'm not saying this is a bad shot. And what I'm talking about is that I've seen some displays of people's work where they take many pictures of the same object, and this is where I'm saying it has to be really thought through to the finest degree. And you know, if you had kind of like 20 of these, all the same, but they're not the same. And this is more about what contemporary photography can be about. And it's not everyone's cup of tea, even to the point that you said, and you need storyline behind some of this, because that's important with contemporary photography, that it was the same chicken that lays the same egg, but you know, you had 20 pictures exactly the same, but they're not. Every single egg from that same chicken is very different, but we don't really see it. It's just taken as a mundane thing in the kitchen. So again, you know, you've taken me somewhere else from here, and I think this has got great potential as a contemporary piece that would normally die badly in a normal competition. I think it has got strength as a panel, but I just think it needs fine tuning. Lovely to see it though, but we'll pass on it. You can tell I was keen on that. I talked too much on it.
Faded blooms.
I've always liked these kind of like high key backlit flowers, particularly the delicate flowers. And it's interesting that what photography does for us, even though we have to kind of like be impartial when judging, but we do have our memories and our feelings yanked by what pictures do to us. And when I see these, I don't see them all that often, and these have been done very, very well. But when I see these, it takes me back to my favourite gardening books. I'm not a big gardener. I used to be years ago, but not these days. But I have a set of my dad's old gardening books from Reader's Digest from might even been the 50s. I don't know. They are so old. And they've got these lovely plates similar to this of some of the garden flowers. So it does take me back there. And I've always said I want to try this, and I've never done it. I've never looked into it. I presume, and I could be wrong, but if I was going to shoot it, I'd shoot them maybe on a light table, which I have tucked away somewhere from days of old, to get this kind of like semi-backlit feel. And I think you've done the technique extremely well. You've held in all the delicate whites, and that's beautiful. Maybe some of the darks, you could argue, are a little bit on those mauves are getting a little bit too dark, but what helps is all of those three have the same, so there is a balance there. Now, it has got good balance, but unfortunately, I do find a little bit of repetition going on. They are not exactly the same, I know that, but I would like to see, you know, as opposed to the last one where it was all eggs and the subtleties of those, but we're talking more contemporary. This, I would just like to see whether it's 6 different ones that work together, which is harder to do than 2 styles, or that these 2 styles were, you know, changed a little bit more. And what I'm saying there really is that if you take the top, middle, and the bottom left, they are the same blossom, but I think maybe been changed a little bit, but they are the same, and you almost get a similar sort of feel to some of the others. So I'd like just a little bit more differentiation coming through this as a panel. It almost looks, and this is not meant to be derogatory, and in some ways it's a compliment, but it almost looks like wallpaper if you copy this over and over and over again. And honestly, they've been shot beautifully, and there's wonderful, delicate detail there. But it does have this repetitiveness where I would like, I'd really like 6 showcases of where you've gone with just 2. So we won't hold that one back, but some beautiful work.
Frozen flowers.
Yeah, and you know, really adding on to what I just said on the last panel, where we've got 6 very different situations here. So hopefully you understand what I mean here, that we've not got the repetition, albeit there are similarities, which is actually pulling it all together. So so well done on that. It's an interesting panel. It takes me back to, I think, something like 2013 or 14, and a fellowship panel got agreed for not frozen flowers, but flowers through kind of like cloches outside being photographed in frost, where they've stuck up against the glass of cloches. It was a really interesting panel, actually, and this has that same feel, albeit it's very, very different, because this is cleaner, much cleaner. A bit more different from the usual frozen flowers as well, because I've not seen frozen flowers done this way. I don't know whether you've done anything in post-production to get this whiteness of almost like they are in blocks of white ice rather than clear ice. So not sure how you're doing it, but I do love the technique and how you have gone about it. It is one of my favourite panels. There is a little bit of annoyance for me, but I still love the work. And that is, I think the top 3, absolutely wonderful what you've done, technique, everything. Now, when we come down to the bottom three, particularly bottom left and right, you've not taken the softness as far, and particularly the one bottom right, we're seeing all the stamens, etc., quite clear and sharp, and to a lesser degree, but the same with the one on the left and in the middle. And so they don't have exactly the same styling as the top. I'd have liked all of them to have that softness and blurriness that you've got on those top three. It's only a minor thing, and it's kind of like 3 or 4 blooms really on the bottom, and it does still hold as a panel. I think the technique is lovely, and I'd be interested to know how you actually did this, because I can't believe it's just straight from being frozen, but I could be wrong. A lot of merit. It does hang together lovely, good balance, and we will hold that one back.
Roaming mountain air.
Okay. There's a kind of like implied balance with the 6 images of this panel, because we've got this hare out in the snow in top center, being surrounded by these other ones in this like hole or burrow or whatever. Maybe the top right isn't quite in a burrow, but you have that feel of them all around this top middle one. I'm going to start a little bit negative here, in that you almost get the feel it's a danger of presenting this way, but there's this feeling that most of the shots have been shot within a minute or two, where the hare was in the burrow or this hole in the snow, and you've just kind of like laid there, or in a hide or whatever, and you've just kept shooting as it continued to groom itself. So I wonder about how much there is gone into like putting this panel together, and you've just selected several shots from that one spot, which to me does let it down a little bit. Now, interestingly, I think I'd have given more points if the top left was actually grooming itself, and also the middle one was also in the burrow, so they were all the same, and it was all about 6 images and different ways they were grooming. Because the real big positive for me about this is it's rare that you see pictures of these animals in competitions where they're grooming themselves. They're doing something else usually, and I think that's lovely to see. You almost get a feeling it's like your bunny at home in the hutch. It becomes a lovable, huggable little bunny. I know it's a hare, but it has that feel because of the way it's grooming. I love that different feel to this animal. Technically, I think they're lovely, the shots. When we look at them individually, the fur is absolutely beautiful. Really lovely. You see every little bit of detail, and the thickness of the coat as well is coming through. And you've handled the lighting and the snow very, very well. So yeah, I think although there's in repetition I don't like, I actually think if there'd been more repetition and different grooming, I think we'd had something a bit more unusual with this. So a little bit of a shame of that. So I'm not going to hold that one back.
Harvard flight.
So I think it does say Harvard flight, which is important. So we've got this experience flight where you buy an experience voucher, and I think, and you go along And, you know, this is 6 snapshots of that adventure for this person in the back of the cockpit, bottom left here. It's just 20 past 8. I could probably talk till 20 past 9 on this panel, because one, I'm into aviation. 2, I know this plane, so and I know the instructor as well. So you've ticked some boxes there for me. I will talk a little bit on that, but one thing I will say straight away, all of them, lovely detail for a start, and you know, you've really got things sharp where they need to be. The details coming through. It's always good to see a bit of movement in the propellers, and I do quite like the idea of this last one. To me, that last one, bottom right, is about you've landed and coming back, so it kind of like completes the story. But we do see some detail as well of the aircraft. I've got to say, the Harvard, it's a T6 Texan, also known as. For those of you that don't know, it's an unsung hero of World War II. It is a really important trainer. And this plane flies from Earl's Cone over my house sometimes. And lots of people moan about the noise of it, which is a wonderful noise, and I certainly don't. It is a strong panel. Like I said, great storyline and good technique. Maybe the top left, it's a little bit bright in that bottom right corner in the clouds there. I toned that back just a touch, but you've certainly exposed for the plane itself. Bottom left, and bottom's the word really, but that's Nigel Wilson, who I've flown. I fly for a hobby, and I've flown with him many times in my plane. He's helped me with things, and I've also been up and done aerobatics, as is my son, with Nigel. So that's Nigel Wilson, and I can tell you that Nigel Wilson's bottom is not that important. Okay, so I'm going to have a great bit of fun chatting to him next time I do about his bottom and this picture. But it is part of, you know, the storyline, and so well done on that. We're not seeing what he's looking at, and that sometimes gets pulled up, but we are seeing who's in the cockpit, which is more important, and probably more important than Nigel's bottom. And we do get to see inside the cockpit on the next picture. So I think that's got some good storyline in it. Technically, some good photography as well. A little bit of burning in would maybe help on that top picture. And yeah, and if you're a fan of Nigel's bottom, I guess. I think we will see that one again.
Hero Square.
So I want to be guilty of another bit of a ramble here on this one. A lovely set as a grouping, I think. In fact, one of the best balanced sets, I think, here tonight. I went to Budapest a few years back, probably 2016, I think it was. For those of you over there in Helsted area, and enjoy going to maybe London to see photography exhibitions or art exhibitions or any exhibitions, don't forget about Europe. I popped over to Budapest back then to see a suprematist exhibition at the main gallery in Budapest. It cost me £50 return from Stansted. It's only up the road, isn't it? And it can cost you £50 return to go to London these days. So, you know, £50 to somewhere in Europe. I did spend £50 on a hotel to stay overnight. So I saw the exhibition and spent a day and a half seeing Budapest, and can remember the square as well. A gorgeous spot. So thank you for reminding me of this. And like I said, it's you know, it's mirror-like, isn't it? Which always induces balance, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you keep it simple, you're not going to go wrong. So a lovely balance through the panel, well cropped for what it is. Now, there is an issue, unfortunately, with quality when you look at the pictures individually. there are some issues. It's not quite there, whether you've had to crop in quite a bit. There's one in particular where I can see you've worked on the background. There's some smudginess of, I think, cloning. There's another one where there's a kind of like the remains of a vertical line where there's, I think, been some cloning as well. So spend some time in Photoshop working on that cloning, and you might find that with a higher quality image, because like I say, I think these have been overcropped maybe, and you've not got the best quality to work on. But if you're going to clone, work on a really good quality image. And you've done some good cutout work here. Work on that cloning and getting that so it looks really, really well, fool the judge with it, basically. That's what you want to do. So that's a shame about that, because I think as a set, this is absolutely wonderful. And you really have shown each of these statues in all their glory. So well done on that. But technically, I can't hold it back, unfortunately. It's a shame.
Holy places.
I do like architecture, including churches. Lovely things to photograph. I don't do enough, and I think it's Wells Cathedral that has got the famous steps that was shot by one of the pictorialists, and it's on my list to go and shoot the interior if I can get away with it. I think it's Wells Cathedral. So I think it's there that's got the famous steps. Do you know? It doesn't come across this panel as kind of like your regular what you should put into a panel competition with this text in the images. And quite easily you could turn around and say, well, it doesn't kind of like work. What I like about this is it reminds me of a postcard, and that's a good thing, not a bad thing. Almost to the point that it could probably go on sale in some of these churches as a collection of famous English churches. So I like this feel of that with this text going in there, because that's what a postcard does. It puts you in a place and tells you what it is or where it is. So well done on that. I would have liked 2 more churches or cathedrals in the bottom rather than the interiors. You have produced some balance within the panel with these 2 at the bottom, but I think it should be a bit like another one coming up that's all about those churches and cathedrals and abbeys. Watch out, top right. It's a shame about all that scaffolding, isn't it? I mean, it's a glorious church with some lovely other buildings around it, but we have all that scaffolding, and I can see you've actually worked on sorting out these verticals. But do watch when you start pushing and pulling verticals. Think about what's happening with the aspect, and if you look on that one on the right there, there's a no entry sign. I think that is. It's been a while since I looked at the highway code. But that no entry sign and that part of the lower part of the image, and probably all of it, but we don't notice it so much. It's all been squashed in straightening those verticals, and that happens all the time. So whenever you straighten verticals, if you do that and you've never touched the aspect slider, have a play around with the aspect slider. Make sure you've got a bit of room to be able to do that when you take the original shot, though. So yeah, that's a bit of a shame, really. The 2 at the bottom, you've really pushed the limits, I think, of your camera, because we've lost some detail. Wonderful lighting that you've captured, but the detail is not there, and we really want to see that. For me, the highlight, I've got to say, is right bang in the middle. I think your place where you took Wells Cathedral from, that's absolutely beautiful, and that could be in any book. That really does show Wells Cathedral beautifully, so I love that one. I do think we have a few issues there, so unfortunately we will pass on that one.
We'll take one more, Tony, before we break.
Yeah, let's do that.
Ice skates.
Yeah, lovely set actually, and just an expansive blue as a panel. Love to see this in print actually, because there's some very fine detail throughout all of these, which may be printed on some fine art paper with not too much of a harsh tooth on it, so you do see all that detail. Would be lovely, and very subtle blues. So you know, very much about detail, texture, line, and the colour blue, with a couple of little accents of colour coming in there. You've been very brave in the top middle there with that stone or whatever that is, because I do like what's going on with the leaves down on the bottom corners, but you have intentionally left a stone there. I'm sure you have, because it's so dominant there. It almost gives it, out of all of them, because that stone is there, it starts to bring in a 3D effect on there. So I'm sure that is intentional, and that's why you've put it there. It is different from the others. It's maybe a little bit messier. There's a hair down on that shot with the top middle there as well, compared to all the others. So it kind of does start to separate out a little bit. Top right and middle bottom are fairly similar. They aren't the same, but you know, they're getting close, whereas everything else is quite different. But it does induce some balance with that kind of like that T shape. So I do understand why that is there. The highlight for me is bottom right, this gorgeous little piece with that splash of green in the top right hand corner there. You need to see it on its own to appreciate it, or see it bigger. But that is a lovely photograph on the right hand side there. And you know, we've got some balance going on with the left there, with the kind of more russety brown leaves and a little bit of green starting to pull through. So that does help with the balance there. But I do think it's a great exploration of, like I say, texture, the cut, you know, those mild, subtle tones of blue, the lines as well. And I think that's a good, competent piece. So we'll see that one again.
That's the one.
How many have we gone through, Susan?
We're over halfway, so we're not too bad. I think it's
good pacing, I hope.
Get this going again. It is lines and curves.
There's I think probably 3 panels when you look at them all together. Again, a lovely thing about having them beforehand is, when I've been working with panels on Zoom, is I actually open them all up as much as I can and view them all at once on my 27-inch screen and see what pops out. And there were 3 in particular, the 2 kind of like twirly abstract ones, and this one, which has got a huge amount of presence, if you like, about it. Quite rightly, because it's very high contrast, isn't it? And you know, almost purely black and white, but we'll come back to that, because that's not quite true. So it certainly has huge amount of impact as a panel. Part of that impact, I've got to say as well, is the quality of the images. Even though there's not a lot of detail in these compared to like landscapes and you know, things like the Harvard as well, but where the detail is there, it's absolutely fabulous. So well done on some really high quality, what I call high fidelity images. And this is the sort of images that kind of like says to me, I know where the standard is with the pictures coming through, and you know, I know what Zoom is doing, because I can see the quality of this compared to others where I sometimes might question it. So really very contemporary panel here, very minimalistic, and you've taken I'd say, you know, particularly three or four, say three objects, the top, middle, and bottom, left and right, very mundane subject matter, and you've shown the beauty of really simple line and shape and space, but more importantly, the tones, the very delicate tones, and you know, particularly bottom left and right, we've got, you know, there is a bit of a black line on the bottom right, but the white tones, all those pale tones, absolutely beautiful. Well done on what you've done here, both in camera and in post-production. There is a little bit of an annoyance for me on this. You know, you can make your choices on this, because the author has kind of gone the right way around this with the whole balance of the image. And bearing in mind, we have got 6 very different semi-abstract images to work together in you know, a very monochromatic way. But I think I'd have swapped the bottom middle with the top right, just purely to kind of like work against that vase on the left there. And not only that, I'd have taken that bottom middle one, top right, and then I'd have flipped it as well, a bit like the Citroen car. But so I think that's where it needs to be. Maybe personal choice. It's hard to say, because, you know, neither of them 100% mirror the vase, but you don't expect that. Like I said, you've gone with 6 very different kind of like viewpoints of this and content. So, you know, a hard thing to do and do well. And I think you have done extremely well on this. Yeah, I think it's a fabulous, wonderful, clean, simple panel that works very, very well. I can't emphasize enough on every single image, actually, the subtle tones that are coming through. So that's a super panel. We will see that again.
Natural textures.
Lovely that we're talking about the textures in these sea and landscapes, really, and you have got an abundance of texture going on with these. So well done on that. For me, although you've got all these different viewpoints, I think because we're talking about landscapes in particular and textures, I would have gone with some different lighting. I think most of this, apart from that bottom right, and you know, we're talking about a different time of day, top, middle, but we really want a bit more lighting coming through to lift these textures, a bit like what's happening on the bottom right hand side there, albeit I think maybe the lighting could have been a bit lower on that one, but we can see how different and how strong that bottom right image is compared to the rest. So I think there's, you know, the 3 other corners, unfortunately, are just let down a little bit by lighting. So that's a real shame. I want to talk about this bottom middle shot, because there's at least, I think, another panel for sure tonight. And we're talking panels here where you put a picture in, there's so much, I think, above the rest of the images that you shouldn't put it in. And I advise this when I'm helping people with like panels for RPS, that sometimes if you've got an amazing picture and you put it into a panel, it can show up the rest, even though the rest may be above, you know, let's say above average, okay? Because you don't expect them to be bad anyway. But when you get one that's so strong and so good and maybe so different, it can bring the others down. And I actually think my first look at this bottom middle image was it was a detail shot. I didn't see the boat in the bottom and the sea, and I thought, oh, that's totally, you know, put the panel off balance. We've not gone for these like wide escapes, if you like. And then I saw the boat, and it just changed everything. And I think that's an amazing shot. My favourite of the 6 here. And you can see, you know, I'm weighting towards this picture because of what it is, and that surely does kind of upset that balance of the panel. Absolutely amazing piece of background, and having this boat in to get a feel of, you know, this what looks like a small detailed texture shot. It's actually massive. I love that feel of size that's coming through. Again, maybe not the best lighting for it, but something very, very unusual and very, very strong once you pick up that boat. So I do love that picture. Absolutely beautiful. I just don't think the whole panel is holding together as well. So unfortunately, we're going to let that one go as well.
Reflections of Scotland.
Lovely to see some pictures of Scotland that's not kind of like deep, moody rain and storms, and generally black and white as well. That's very, very popular. But we've got colour and more tranquil scenes, which I think comes across with the fact that we're talking about reflections. I think watch the top left and middle. The top left is a bit too tight, isn't it? Just coming in too close to the peak of those mountains there. And then we've got this very bright patch in the sky again. Just do some dodging and burning with your landscapes. Not just the skies, but you can lift the light as well. And I'd have toned down that bright spot on the middle top there. I think the bottom you've balanced really very, very well. It's very difficult, isn't it, to do these long linear scapes, and they kind of want to take you in and out of the shot fairly quickly, and that can be quite dangerous. But in a panel, it can work well, and I think you've done very well down the bottom there. The middle one, there's not too much, but as an image on its own, once you start to study it, there's some lovely movement going through to that tree on that island there. You almost overlook it, and it's worth just staying and looking at that and just seeing what a beautiful little pathway it takes you to, and to the right place. Top right, you miss at first. There's a lovely little tree, and the reflection says, "Hey, I'm here. Just look, and you'll find me." I really love that little tree. If only we could get some more separation and some good dodging and burning. You could do that. You could kind of take the whole image down, maybe something like a stop darker, and keep that back, or maybe just kind of like dodge that tree with some light to pull that out so we see it above in the landscape as well as in the reflection. So what really I think is a big merit for this is that we're talking about reflections, and that really does come across really, really well. I bet there's been plenty of books published called Reflections of Scotland, and if not, then there certainly should be, because what you have done is you've shown the merit of not just the usual moody stuff we see, but actually these I presume they're locks, but these lovely locks and the reflections you get. So well done on getting that across. That's certainly really, really strong. I think, you know, there's 2 or 3 issues there which will just stop me from holding this one back, but one of the stronger ones of the rest of the batch, I've got to say.
Rosebuds.
Yeah, and rosebuds, I've got to say, well, we'll let you go through here, actually. So, yeah, as I was jumping in and saying, rosebuds are absolutely lovely, aren't they? and I guess all the ladies want them in bunches of 12s as reds, but you know, I think you have captured the beauty of rosebuds here really, really well. And what's interesting is that we have got some repetition here. I was talking about repetition earlier, and that certainly is showing with, I think, the flowers themselves, particularly with the upside down T of those flowers, but we have got some different ones left and right top. However, what you've done is you've broken up that repetition with a variation of these vases, and I think that's the clever side of this, and also the distribution of these petals. And I think you've done a really good job in that they're not too intentional, the petals. I think there is some fluidity there with those. I'm not 100% sure about the top middle, and it's the vase, you know. When I look at all the other vases, they tend to be a little bit more classical. Maybe top right is a little bit kind of like, has that 60s or 70s feel, and bottom left maybe a little bit more closer to modern, although that could be maybe 60s or 70s. But this top middle one is very contemporary, isn't it? And very pink, which is kind of like there is a pink theme, pink and peach sort of theme through the colours here. But I do wonder if it's too strong. But the strength of the two peaches do help kind of like subdue that a bit. Lighting's lovely. Talking about those exotic bottles earlier, I don't think this is the same author, because I think there's been kind of like, you can put two in tonight. I don't think it's the same author, and the person that put the bottles in earlier, maybe talk to this author, because you know, they are controlling the lighting much better here, and also doing something a little bit different with the background. So there's some strong technique coming in here. I also think a lot of pre-thought as well, so that, you know, is worthy of merit as well. And you really have kind of like helped to mix repetition up very well in the layout of the individual images. So I think we'll see that one again.
Sunny morning in the greenhouse.
Well done on. I haven't spoken at all, I don't think, about titles tonight, and titles don't worry me too much, really. Pictures stand up on their own, but sometimes a title does it for me, and this one does, because it does have that feel of sunny morning in the greenhouse, and maybe it's cold outside, and you go in there and there's a little bit of heat from these little greenhouse heaters. I don't have a greenhouse, but I remember my parents having one. So you do get that feel from the title. So well done on that. It's unusual. I do think we do have this issue again of pictures not quite being different enough. If we look at the right hand side, those two plants, you know, it's the same style of plant, if not the same plant, but there's not a lot of difference between them, really. And the same on the left, you know, it's a similar feel to each of those. But then, you know, we look at the two in the middle, we've got something different going on there. And I think they work better with one of the other pairs, if you like. So we've got four that are quite interesting. And that's the strength of this, as well as, I think, this story of Sunny Morning in the Greenhouse. This is again one of these ones that's just taken my thoughts somewhere else, and I will say straight away that because I think we've got this kind of double amount of repetition, I'm not going to hold this one back, but I do love this concept. It almost makes me want to have a greenhouse. I think if you planned it well enough, I think if you got the technique 100%, and you got the variety right, I think there's a potential ARPS panel in this themed idea. I love the idea of kind of like going out through the seasons into the greenhouse and exploring what's there to photograph, close up of detail of sunny mornings in the greenhouse. And I think there's a 1 to 2 year project in the making here, which, like I say, if I had a greenhouse, it'd be something I think I'd like to explore. So I really think you've got a great idea here, and it's almost a reflection of maybe that your love of plants and gardening and gardening in the greenhouse. So a really unusual panel. I think it's got some fantastic legs for the future. Get some more variety though, so we will pass on this one.
Birds and bees.
Yeah, not many, not much in the way of nature or natural history tonight, really, which is fairly unusual. So at least we've got something coming through here. It's an interesting panel again, as in the fact that the title really does it, because normally you'd say, you know, what are the bees doing there, but it's the birds and the bees. It goes along with the phrasing, if you like. So I do understand that. That flower bottom, the middle bottom, is very, very strong in the panel. So do watch something like that. And again, we do have a bit of repetition there with that. So I think that just does bring the panel down a little bit. I think the strength is I'd have kept with the birds, and I quite like the 3 birds where we've got these tones of brown coming through. And I think that works really, really well, to the point that the gulls on the left there, as you know, starting to appear too bright compared to with the rest of the images. And you know, I think that just pulls you, once you get down to this flower, it pulls you over to the left. We do have this goose, I guess. I always say that there are kind of like really only 2 types of birds. There are sparrows, and they're either regular or exotic ones, and ducks, and they're either regular or exotic ones, because I don't know too much about birds really. But I guess it's a goose on the top right, and I think the fact that that's the whole head, again, that kind of acts as some uneven balance in that top corner against what's going on in the bottom. So I think you have got to really be careful on what you're bringing in the way of wildlife to make this work as a really well balanced panel. All of them, I think, are, you know, very, very competent shots, and the detail is, you know, really, really lovely. My favourite has got to be the robin. Yeah, I told you I struggled with birds, but I do know the robin. I quite like that out of focus area in front. It's almost like you're peeking out the window into this bird that's in your garden, and you get that lovely feel of realism coming through there. I quite like the spiritual side of that as well. It's maybe just me, but that orange halo around the head and the so-called blood of Christ on the breast there, it has a kind of like a spiritual feel to it as well. So so that to me is a very strong image there. As I said, the technique, I think on these you've done extremely well, but from a point of view of balance, I think we've got too many things going on with different viewpoints and croppings, so we will let that one go.
Moving hedgerow.
This panel for me really, I call this the one that got away, and it's such a shame. This could have quite easily won tonight. I actually love the technique that's going on here, and what you've done with the texturization of the image, however you've done that. I love the colours coming through, these wonderful browns going through to orangey yellows, and that mild hint of blue, which complements those other colours. And absolutely beautiful when I look at individual images. And the reason I say it's the one that got away is that I think there's some, it may only be, I may be 100% right, or maybe it's only just subtle, but I think there's definitely top left and bottom right is just a reversal, a flip. It almost looks like a flipped image, so it's the same image that's been flipped. And I think top right and bottom middle may be the same flipped. And if they've not been flipped, they are so close when they you know, when you look at them, they are almost mirror images. So I don't think we have a true panel of 6 here, which is unfortunate. And I have to give, you know, some sort of merit towards that. And it's not like the eggs, if you like, where that's a different format of a contemporary stylization of a panel. But when I look at the individual content, I absolutely love it. It has that abstract expressionism feel to them. You get a feel of some wonderful lighting coming through, even though you've got all of this I guess, post-production going on. So really disappointing for me. I'm not even going to hold it back. And I'm sure you could do more. You must have more of this stuff. And really sorry I can't hold this one back. But that's the one that got away. So we will pass on that one.
Total abstraction.
It's very similar to the very first one that came through, and interestingly, there is a little bit more balance in some ways, I suppose, because we've got kind of like the corners are the swirls, the spirals that are working, and then you've got the two, you know, the column in the centre there, and working well as two in the centre there with these black backgrounds. But I am going to come back to these black backgrounds as I did earlier, and you know, we have got kind of like a reversed mirror of these backgrounds. So top 2 right, bottom 2 left, black backgrounds. There's a reversed mirror balance, but I think this one maybe should be all black backgrounds. However, I do love what's going on with the top left, bottom right, where you're blending these images in. So very similar to some of the ones in the first one. And this is the thing, you know, I'm guessing maybe the same author, or certainly 2 people working on a similar sort of project, but they are very close, and you force me to judge one against the other. And if they are both of the same level, I think then, you know, you could say, well, we'll treat them accordingly. But I think this one is a little bit less than the first panel, because we've got the 4 corners, which are fairly simple swirls. I think you've worked better with well, certainly the first panel had the better versions of these. And although I appreciate the difference in the middle here with these 2 in the middle, again, I think the others on the first panel worked better. Very interesting one, top middle is different from the others, and whether it's the content of the colours that were there originally have put that black through, but we've got this black ripple just breaking things up, and a very shallow, almost like a propeller in the middle with it with the colours and tones flying off. So I do find that quite interesting compared to the others on the black background. But I think the other one is stronger, so we will let this one go.
Towers and spires.
So very similar to the previous one of cathedrals and abbeys, etc. But this time we do have all cathedrals and abbeys and churches or whatever they are, including a local one at Chelmsford there. So yeah, well done on that. Watch your spacing. You look at Norwich there, the top of that spire is just cutting into the top, which is a bit of a shame. The same with I think that's Tewkesbury, where that's just starting to get a little bit closer. I do like this top left, this higher viewpoint. That does show that off very, very well. If you compare the left one to the top right, and we've gone quite low, it's starting to distort the tower at Tewkesbury quite a bit there, which is a bit unfortunate with an awful, that low viewpoint's given an awful lot of foreground as well. But you go back to St David's, and I think you're showing that off beautifully. Watch things like, we've got King's Cambridge down the bottom, and probably hard to get a good angle on this. So you've gone for like showing the whole long length of this, and you've worked, I can see on all of these that you have been working where you can on the uprights. Be careful when you work on uprights and you've got something like King's Cambridge here, that don't just work on the uprights, pulling those vertical lines down to sort out uprights if that's the way you're doing it. But you can also run horizontal lines to sort out horizontals. So what we've got a side-on view with perspective showing as well, and that always looks odd. So you can see it's taller on the left and goes smaller and shorter at the right. And you can quite easily change that with the perspective tool. So, and that would make it, a rectangle, and it just makes it look a little bit more natural. Again, watch out for aspect on that. So what about these texts areas here? Again, I think it works when it puts you into the realms of a postcard, and I think that's what it does for me. Be careful with text if you're going to put it in. It can be hard to read some of this old classic lettering. Tewkesbury, I can just about see there, and I know it goes, if you like, with the age and what you see in some of these holy places, but maybe just being able to see things a little bit clearer with something not quite so busy in the font would help, but still some sort of classic font coming through. Yeah, and I'd also say, just with this one in particular, again, we've got some good light here and there, but maybe things just a little bit better where we're getting some cross lighting, because these have all got wonderful textures, and you really want to show that coming through, rather than like flat lighting at Norwich is quite flat and frontal. So always with architecture, try and get as much texture as you can. There's one little thing I do particularly like about this. I don't think it's in everyone, but if you are into shooting lots of cathedrals and churches, there's almost this kind of like personal little thing that I quite like in some of these pictures, and it's not something I usually do, but it has come through in your images, and just a little bit of human interest. And I love architecture, but I rarely like people in it. But Bury St Edmunds there, that child just sitting there on the bench. For a start, it does put in really scale. But I almost wonder if it's like it could be a little personal signature that works with these, where you always have maybe a couple in the shot. But yeah, I quite like where you're going with it. Just watch on some of these aspects, watch that cropping, and keep shooting. Keep shooting cathedrals and holy places. Lovely. But we will pass on that one.
Into trees.
Another one of the panels which kind of almost did stand out as well, being very monochromatic and almost kind of like a line drawing feel coming through on here. So it does give a very different feel to all the other panels, and very stark and cold as well, which you'd expect from the title. I think this panel really is about the trees, and you could say that maybe half of these trees aren't anything spectacular, but because of the way they've been captured, you have made some very ordinary, simple trees look extraordinary, really. And it is about their shape and the texture that comes through all of the line detail that's coming through here as well. And it really is, I think, about appreciating some wonderful shapes. That tree top right is lovely, as top left as well. They're all lovely, the trees. I mean, it is an appreciation of these trees in winter. I think because you've gone the simple route, and this is just me personally, but it is all about these wonderful trees. And I wonder if you could simplify it even more and get rid of some of the foreground. I'm not sure whether you've put some sort of like I don't think it is a standard white vignette around it. I think you've done something more than that. But I quite like the idea that you've taken them to white, but I would maybe lose some of the foreground, so it's almost a horizontal line and the tree itself. But I do appreciate you're trying to show maybe winter in that foreground as well. The one on the left is starting to go a little bit soft, but the shape is there, and it's a lovely shape in the tree. Bottom middle, I think there is some issues with quality on there. That's not quite as sharp as the others, but it does have a strong and is strong and has presence within the panel. In some ways, the bottom right is the odd one out, but it is mirrored on the left-hand side with some different trees. And the reason I think it stands out a little bit different is because the reflections, which are absolutely gorgeous. I'd maybe take those reflections just a little bit whiter. Just keep the reflections, but maybe the space in between, push them a little bit whiter. But that's me saying pushing this to white, and that is only me. So I'm putting some personal thoughts into here, but I do think what you've done is lovely, actually. You're showing the trees off beautifully, and I think even though we do have a bit of an issue with the bottom middle, as a panel it does stand out well. I think we will see that one again.
Zoo animals.
Is this the last panel?
It is.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm glad we finished on this panel. Got some good and bad to say on this one, but it's an interesting panel. And there's someone I do some one-to-one training with, and they love monkeys and apes. And I don't think they'll ever win big prizes or anything for the pictures, but one of the things I say is, like, if you've got a zoo on your doorstep, why not, and you like animals, why don't you just specialize in zoo animals and become one of the best at it if you can, and get an annual pass, and over 2, 3, 4 years you can hone your skills and produce some amazing work of zoo animals. So what I'm saying here is nothing wrong with zoo animals. It's a form of photography, and nothing wrong with that at all. Going back to something I said earlier, is that there are times you shouldn't put a really strong image in with a bunch of others, whether they're good, bad, above average, or whatever. But if you have one very, very strong image in a panel, be careful. And we have that with this one here. I'm really glad that you did put it in, because it's my favourite image of the whole night, I think. And I'm not really into animals, but let's talk about the panel anyway. I think this panel shows almost that there is some cohesion there, but it's not quite right. To the point, it's almost like possibly two photographers put this together. And I'm talking not at the taking stage, but in post-production. And what I'm saying is that where we've got these blends going on, and I do like the idea of these blends, it's worked on some and it's not worked on others. So they're not kind of like blending enough, and it's not very convincing, which is a real shame because you've got some different textures on each one and they are wonderful textures, but it's not quite worked. If you look at the top middle and the meerkats and the kangaroo bottom left, can you see those in particular, kind of like the blending is starting to come together really well, whereas the top left and right, it's not blended enough. They're almost kind of like sitting on top, and to a certain degree, but not quite as much with the bottom, middle, and right. So, you know, getting consistency with your technique in however you're blending this in Photoshop or whatever you're using, that's not coming across here, which is unfortunate. And for the love of me, I don't know why, because I'm going to talk about this top middle picture of the meerkats, which is absolutely stunning. You know, I put it into a competition on its own if you haven't already. There's something really quite unusual about this, and this is the one, you know, you shouldn't have put it in some ways because it's so good compared to the others. It has this fine art quality about it. It's almost like a cross between wood burning and wood etching. You've really blended it into this background perfectly, and it is amazing to the point. If you can get that consistency and the right subject matter and the right backgrounds into a large panel, I tell you that would sing through an ARPS. And if you had got it to a really high fine level, I think that idea and that concept at such a high standard could potentially be into fellowship realms. I know it's a panel competition, but I do think that picture is a stunning piece of work, and it doesn't show through even to how well you've done on the kangaroo. So you know, hats off to an amazing picture, top middle there, but it's not cohesive with the rest of it, unfortunately. So I can't hold that back. But an amazing picture, love it.
It's not.
Do you want me to go from here? Would that help?
I think so.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Oh, that's all right. I'm happy. I was just thinking of your members. That was all. All right. So I've got to give a first, second, and third. I am going to give one highly commended, and I'm allowed to give a personal favourite that doesn't have to be from any placings. So I'm going to start. I actually have two personal favourites. So as they're not like official placings, I hope I'm okay to give two personal favourites. And it's really from the fact that although both of these have not been held back, but it's their potential and where they could go, and they certainly resonated with me as well. So one of my personal favourites is the eggs. I think it's you know, not many people's cups of tea, but I think as contemporary photography, it's certainly got some merit there, and you know, like I said, something very close to that could quite easily be seen at the Tate Modern. My apologies. Was it just called eggs? I think it was, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, but I am going to have a second personal favourite, and it is the I can't remember the name the name of it, but it was the white Greek buildings.
Blue and white.
Blue and white. Thank you. Yeah. Again, I just think that's given me some ideas and where it could potentially go, and I think there's some really interesting shapes, lines, monotone, the way it's balanced as well, and next time I'm in a country like that, that's going to be at the forefront of my mind. So well done on those two, even though they didn't get held back.
X was Roger Cuthbert, and blue and white was Lorraine Green.
So let's sort out a highly commended here. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3 and a highly commended. So it does mean, unfortunately, 3 of these will get dropped, but I'm not going to drop them at the beginning. I'm going to keep you in suspense on the higher placings. So And I think possibly I may have changed my mind on this. So, highly commended. Is going to be rosebuds.
And that is Rosie Carpenter.
Third is going to be ice skates.
And that is Brian Fleming.
And second is going to be frozen flowers.
And that is Jill Beckett.
So well done on those, and very well done for first, which will be lines and curves.
And that is Brian Fleming again. So well done for getting first and third.
Well done, Brian.
Well done, Brian.
Well done, Brian.
Well done, Brian.
I can't believe I didn't place a picture of pictures of an aeroplane.
Well done, Brian.
Congratulations, Brian.
Yeah, well done, Brian.
Are you there?
With us?
He's gone very
Yes,
fast.
yes, I am now. I was desperately trying to unmute.
Ah,
Probably had five.
well done indeed.
Well
Thank
done.
you.
Steve, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, I would. Obviously, I'd very much like to thank Tony for his very balanced views and his amazing perception. It's interesting, I think, that this is probably the first time that we haven't self-judged the panel of six. And I'm going to pat myself on the back for thinking all along that this competition was too important for the members, because frankly, we're not very good at judging our own pictures or even our colleagues' pictures. And I think tonight, Tony brought an entirely new dimension to the analysis of the panels. I think we've learned a huge amount tonight. And of course, I'm pleased to say that I chose him because he had won the Chelmsford panel himself. So he knew more about it than the rest of us put together. And so it proved. Every time we have a competition or a new judge or something interesting, something extraordinary happens, it's kind of little things, but who would have thought that you put a picture in of a bloke's bum and the judge would not only notice it, but know who owns the bum and the make of the aeroplane. I mean, you couldn't make it up, could you? That was absolutely, utterly extraordinary. I also noticed with great interest that the things that are wrong with some panels are exactly the things that are so right with others. That there's a constant conflict between difference and repetition. And that really and truly, this is about the seventh image. And it's so easy to be distracted by the individual pictures. Lorraine's hairs, I mean, every single one of those pictures is absolutely stunning, without question. But I have to agree, it didn't really make a panel. And yet every picture was wonderful. And the concept, the idea that you can put a picture in a panel that's too good for the rest, you know, I found that quite illuminating and extraordinary. And yes, an absolute truism. But we know that it's a panel competition and the whole is more than the sum of the parts. I'm not going to go on about Tony's great qualifications. I did that last time. I thanked him, and we're going to see him quite soon because he's going to come and give us a talk on his suprematism photography. But I want to say it was an exceptionally enjoyable night. Great perception, beautifully balanced, nice and relaxed. Tony, I can't thank you enough, but I'm going to ask everybody to put their hands together and show you how much we appreciated it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. It's been really enjoyable. It was a pleasure to see all of the photographs. I really loved the last couple of days. I didn't spend 2 days doing it, but just when I delved into them. So really lovely, some lovely work there. Thank you.